Hey everyone, I had an entirely different topic planned this week, but Source had another thing in mind. So stick around and stay tuned for the message that really wanted to come through. Hello and welcome back to the Monthly Goddess Temple. My name is Courtney Tiffany. I am a writer, an intuitive, and a priestess of the divine feminine. And today I want to talk about Aphrodite and Aries. This concept of all is fair in love and war. Because I feel like they have a very unique kind of dynamic and situation, and it's something I'm feeling called to explore further. So let's dive in. I want to take us back though. Before we talk about Aphrodite, I want to talk about the whole goddess evolution. When we look at goddesses like in ancient Sumeria and Mesopotamia and I'm like, where's Astarte from? I forget. My mind's going blank. But anyways, you go way, way, way back, right? Like 5,000-6,000 years ago. And Nana was a goddess of love. She was a fertility goddess, but she was also a goddess of war. And this is true for Ishtar. This is true for Astarte. This is true for Anat, the Egyptian goddess. All of these goddesses were goddesses of love and war. And then we get to the Greek period. And suddenly, there's just the goddess of love, and then there's the goddess of war. There's kind of this division happening. And whether that's because Greece had like a plethora, like a large pantheon, and they're just kind of trying to separate everything. But as we know, Aphrodite is the goddess of love. She's a fertility goddess, goddess of beauty, and Athena is the goddess of war. Aphrodite and Athena they kind of like butt heads in the mythology. They're not always, they're like cordial to each other, I feel like, but they're like not friends, right? They're not BFFs. And there's a lot of resistance there, I feel like, or animosity. But when we look at Aphrodite and we look at her lovers, this is where like Aries is the god of war, right? It makes perfect sense for Aphrodite to unite with Aries, the god of war, because what do love and war have in common? Passion. That's what fuels the fires to both of those things, right? And even you can look at Norse mythology too. That's another one I forgot to mention. Freya is the Norse goddess of love and war. She is queen of the Valkyries. And granted, that was a war culture, and like the two are very much intertwined. But just this concept that Aphrodite is just the goddess of love, and her most passionate lover, I feel like, amongst the gods is Aries, right? God of war. And why they chose to separate, why Aphrodite isn't necessarily a warlike goddess, I'm not sure. But, that's what we have Athena for, I guess. But when you think about, like, when it comes to love, the shadow side of love, right, is this obsession, is this compulsion to like be with somebody, right? To devote all of your time to worship them. It kind of gets, what was that? That Netflix series, You? He's like stalking his like this girl. Yeah, it's kind of like that, right? That's shadow side. Not healthy. Oh, that's so funny that came up. And you get like blinders on. Like we've all heard the phrase like love is blind, right? Because when you're in love, when you're enamored with something, when you're just like all in, you don't see anything else. You're like in tunnel vision here. And this is also the side of war, right? When you're fighting for something and you're like thirsty for blood and you're angry and you're consumed with rage, right? That's the shadow side of Aries. This is the same thing. It's the same source fueling two things, right? So for Aphrodite to be united with Aries, it makes complete and perfect sense. Now, Aphrodite was married to Hephaestus, right? God of the forge. And like she was never, why she married Hephaestus, we'll never know. Hephaestus was like, he had like a club foot. He was kind of disformed. He was kind of a loner amongst the gods. And we see, I don't know whether Aphrodite saw something in him, right? As a goddess of beauty, right? She could recognize the beauty in him, within him. And he made these beautiful swords and her golden girdle that, I mean, he had the power to kind of create anything, these powerful items, right? And that is beautiful, right? This like way of creating. But her passion lied with Aries. And it makes sense because love and war are very much intertwined, right? Talk about having like a love-hate relationship. You love somebody so much, but they anger you so much. And it's just like you can't stand it sometimes. But again, the shadow side, right? We have to remember, like, the myths for the Greek gods, like, it's not okay. It's not. And so when we work with deity, when we work with goddess, it's really important to connect with that divinely aligned aspect of the gods. So flipping it, right, and looking at the divine aspect, looking at Aphrodite embodying love, right? Aphrodite, the goddess of love, goes after her pleasures, goes after what she desires, and she allows herself to receive that. So even though she was married to Hephaestus, she loved Aries, right? And wanted to be with him. And they were even caught in like Hephaestus's bed, and Hephaestus had made like this unbreakable net, right? And trapped the gods. And Aphrodite and Aries, and he like strung them up for everybody to see, right? Like, look at what they're doing. And Aphrodite and Aries like were naked and just like laughing about it, right? Like, oh well, like it is what it is. This divine aspect of Aries, not the power-hungry, domineering, controlling, greedy, bloodthirsty, like, demon that we see depicted perfectly in, like, the first Wonder Woman movie, right? Ares, the god of war, like, causing this chaos and destruction to ensue and people to turn on each other, right? That's not in our nature. That is the shadow side, right? It's not our nature to fight with one another. When we are divinely aligned, when we're connected to source, it's our nature to unite, right? To be in community, to help one another, right? To lift each other up. And Aries he's like the action-oriented, masculine, driven, like authority, right? And so there's this beautiful dynamic between the two, right? When it's divinely aligned. But Aphrodite had many lovers, but it's Aries that I felt called to share about today. With everything going on in the world, you know, one of my favorite songs is called Belief by John Mayer. And, in the song, he says, if belief is what we're fighting for, like, we're never going to win the war if belief is what we're fighting for. And it's so true, right? So many times, like, we believe, like, we're right. This is the way it needs to be done. And then we get to that shadow, Aries, right? Like, I'm going to take it by force, or I'm going to make it true. But really what's driving us is fear, right? Fear of losing control, fear of not having something, like we're holding on to something so tight, right? Fear of being wrong, fear of, your whole world upending. And so you fight to keep that. And again, we do the same thing with love. When we're in an unhealthy relationship, right? But we fear change. We fear confronting the demons. We fear, like, maybe even for our lives, like, if it's an unhealthy, like, or even an abusive relationship, right? Like, there's fear driving that. But you stay because you fear the unknown. You fear of what's going to happen if you leave, right? Fear is a crazy motivator for both love and war. So bringing it back to heart space, to alignment, right? Looking at, and this is what's so beautiful about Aphrodite, looking at how we can embody love, divine love, right? We fill our cups with that. And that can go and create this ripple effect. I was reading this book recently called Discover Your Dharma. And, in it, she says, what if, just think about, she gives two scenarios, right? Think about if you were so, essentially, she said, aligned with your Dharma, but it can work either way, right? When you were just the embodiment of pure divine love, right? You were connected to source. You were living your truth. You recognize your power and your authenticity and your ability to create, right? Aphrodite, right? What happens, in the scenario that she gives, like, imagine you come from this place, right? You wake up in such a gratuitous mood, and you go to work, and, somebody basically, there's like a trigger, right? Somebody says, I didn't get that thing done that you asked me to. And you say, you know what, don't worry about it. Just get it to me when you have time. Not a big deal, right? Embodying love. Causing that person to relax, right? And then because they're relaxed and they feel a little bit better and the stress is kind of taken off of them, right? Not to like feel all this pressure to get this work done in the moment. They then invite somebody out to lunch, right? And then it just goes on and on and on. And it's just this ripple effect, right? And this person's excited because they're invited out to lunch. Like, they're the new person in the office. And it's like, oh my gosh, like, yes, like they're making connections, right? But that one act, that one simple act to choose to embody love, then creates this ripple effect, right? Like, just imagine yourself walking down like the street and somebody drops something and you bend and you see like they have kids and they got their hands full and like a million things are going on and you just simply bend down and pick it up, right? How thankful is that mother? I don't know why, or that person, right? In my mind, it's mother, because that's me, like juggling 20 things at once when I go shopping with my kids, right? Or even just a simple smile to a stranger who might have been lonely, who might have been contemplating suicide. Like, you don't know what's going on with other people, right? But you can make a choice. You can choose to embody love. You can choose to be kind. You can choose to see the beauty and be present in each and every moment, right? And let that drive you. Go with that flow. That's Aphrodite. That's her magic, right? To be this embodiment of love and just kind of surrender and say, okay, where do I feel called to be guided right now? What do I really want? Right? What are my desires? But staying present, not worrying about the crap that happened in the past, right? And not being stressed out about how you're going to make it in the future. It's being present. It's being here in this moment. And witnessing and being conscious, being aware. And there are so many beautiful little moments like that, right? And the choices that we make, right? I notice a huge difference when I choose to consciously, to be present with my children, right? To be the embodiment of love, to make sure that I am connected to source, right? That I am giving from a overflowing cup. Not only are my kids happier, my husband's happier, right? And then that just spreads. Then they're kinder and nicer to everybody that they come across, right? That's embodying love. Now we can flip it and look at the other scenario, right? Not being in alignment, not being happy, not embodying divine pure love, right? Not filling our cups first, not having that solid foundation of self-love and self-care and embodiment, right? And then we're in the shadow side, coming from a place of fear, stress, unhappiness, chaos, war, believing with all of our being that we're right. Well, that's just your perspective. Two people can be right about different things, right? Or the same thing. Embodying hate is like this festering. I don't even want to talk about it just because it feels icky in my body. But just think about, right? Like when you're in a bad mood. When you're not choosing love. You're stressed out. You're unhappy. Anxiety. You're worried about what you said to somebody 3 years ago, or like overanalyzing, replaying this thing in your head that's in the past that you have no control over. That happened and it's done with, right? Stressed about, how things are going to work out in the future. You don't know. It's out of your control. But think about like not embodying love and then you losing your cool, right? With your kids, with your spouse, with your family members, with your friends, right? And saying something that you end up regretting. And then think about how that makes them feel. And then think about how the people that they interact with, right? Again, this ripple effect. You have a lot more power, influence, effect, right, than you realize with everybody that you come across. Because we're all energy. We all have our own auras, right, that radiate out. And it's what's in that aura, right? It's what's in your energy. It's what you're embodying, right? That energy you're putting out, whether it's positive or negative. It's love or war. This isn't at all where I thought this was going to go. I thought we were going to be talking about Aries and Aphrodite, but it feels really important and in the moment. And you know what? It is what it is. And that's just what happens sometimes. But choosing to embody love. I've been thinking about this a lot too lately. I mean, just this ripple effect, right? But just take a moment and think about all of the little things that you've done. You probably don't even realize the impact that they've made on somebody. You don't even think about it, right? Because we're just going about our day. We have no idea. Like, if you're lucky, they might reach out years later, right? And be like, you saved my life. Or that moment, like when you smiled at me or waved to me, like, that's when we became friends, right? A complete and total stranger, but you just came up to me and said hello, and we got to talking, and because you noticed something that I was carrying or whatever, right? Those little small moments, those little sparks, right? That's the drop in the water. That's the ripple effect. So don't think that the things that you do don't matter, because they do. Significantly. I'm going to leave that there. I feel like this has gone on. It took a turn, but it felt really needed just to say, you have a choice every day to choose how you're going to live it, how you're going to treat people, how you're going to love yourself, and how you can stay in alignment, how you can live from that place of truth, how you can embody love. You have a choice every single moment, right? You have a choice to let go of the past. You have a choice to be present. And if you've made it this far, then great. Because most people watching videos online don't usually make it, right? So clearly this resonated. And that's a good thing. I mean, that's just why I love working with Aphrodite so much. Remembering to embody love. I mean, any goddess, really. But she allows us to kind of open up and surrender and receive as well. Right? Because it's not just about giving, right? There's this balance. There's this flow. Right? And this belief that like what you give out, what you put out is coming back to you, right? Your entire world, your entire reality is a mirror for you. How you treat people. I mean, it's like the golden rule, right? Treat people how you want to be treated. It's so simple. It's so simple. But something I think that we've forgotten. So you can choose. You can choose on how that ripple effect's going to be. You can choose which energy you're going to put out there. Right? But it takes like getting honest and a conscious choice to embody that love. Thank you all for sticking with me and going off on my random tangent, but I appreciate you, and I will see you next week.